In the IT field, networking tends to be pretty important, whether it's people or machines. Learn how best to wield Tanium Discover today on Tanium Tech Talks. Welcome back to Tanium Tech Talks. I am Alex Miller, and with me, as always, is my incredible co-host, Jesh Sachs.
Hi, everyone. We are so excited to be here with you today. We were reviewing some of our older content within Tech Talks, and I don't know about you guys, but if I see something older than 1 or 2 years in tech, I automatically think, ooh, what's changed? So we're here to share that with you today for some of our most exciting modules. Well, actually, just one of them, Discover, which is just really key in terms of finding out what's in your IT environment and providing you visibility into those interfaces in your estate.
With us today is our resident networking and Tanium Discover expert, Nash King. Nash, please introduce yourself and maybe you could share with us a little bit about what we'll be covering on today's episode.
Hi, I'm Nash. I'm a senior advanced consulting engineer with US Public Sector, which basically means I roll up to the government and I say, hey, you're doing technical things wrong. Have you thought about trying this? Sometimes it works. I've spent a number of years here at Tanium kind of being the discover person because my previous gig had me at a network engineer as a network engineer. So I can't pretend I don't know how switches and routers work. Today, I really just want to walk you through some of the basic best practices for Discover and give you some guidance on how you can go from I found things to knowing things about your network, bringing things under Tanium management, and maybe finding the occasional fun thing like that Nintendo that someone brought into work right after they bought their new Switch.
That's fantastic, and I know you have some really good stories. I mean, we've been working together. We probably got hired near close to the same time. It's been about 5 years for all three of us, and I know just to lend a little credence to your credentials. If I have a networking question, I'm probably going to start with you. I'm sorry to say. So
You know, everyone else does, especially if it's IPv6.
Absolutely. And I know you have a couple really juicy stories for us that I've been hearing that you shared with me in the past. So I'm really excited to hear those again. And yeah, let's get this demo started.
Okay, so if you are not familiar with Discover, you're going to get here by going to your modules and then finding my favorite word in the whole wide world. Tanium Discover is intended to do network-based discovery of interfaces in your environment. Keep in mind, an interface and an endpoint are not the same thing because any given endpoint can have multiple network interfaces. Think your laptop that has both a wired network card and a wireless network card. So within Discover, you will find interfaces, which are then associated with endpoints. I want to emphasize that Discover is for network-based discovery. If you are trying to do a cloud inventory for like AWS or Azure, or we have a couple of others, but you want to use Asset for that instead, especially for Azure, because due to how they do their software-defined networking, every interface has the same MAC address. And here in Discover, we use that MAC address as the primary key. So if you have 70,000 interfaces that all have the same MAC address, you'll only ever see one of those within Discover.
Just to add some color here, Nash, I think you were the one who helped me with this, but I had a customer who did exactly that. We scanned one of their cloud environments, and they were so confused as to why they were just getting duplicates of the same interface over and over and over again. And it was exactly that, the MAC address. So highlighting that call out right there.
You'll also see this with virtual machines. You've made a template. You're just copy and pasting that VM. It might have the same MAC address, the same serial number, the same name. Sometimes making things all the same is not great. But what is great is the kinds of information that we can find for you with Discover. This just kind of gives you a high level view. You can tell that we've got a couple of different kinds of scan discovery going on, and I'll go into those in a moment. You can see we've got our MAC addresses. We give you an attempt to identify the manufacturer. Sometimes it's a randomized MAC address, so you're going to get unknown randomized. Sometimes it's a made up we call this an OUI, these first 6 digits. Sometimes it's a made-up OUI that doesn't belong to anyone, and sometimes it's Apple or Cisco. You can see that we've got sometimes some host names. That depends on your DNS setup. If you have a healthy reverse lookup zone in your DNS, as configured on the endpoints doing the scan, then you will have pretty reliable host names. If you don't have a reverse lookup zone, so that's when you do like NS lookup 192.168. Whatever, like a whole IP address. If that doesn't work, or if it gets updated very slowly, you may have no host name. You may have an incorrect a host name that doesn't match that particular network interface card. We will do an attempt at OS identification, and if you are using our highest level of Nmap scan, we will also try to look for open ports. So talking about scans, we have a couple of different kinds within Discover. You can either do it with IPv4, which gives you a couple of different options for how we're going to pull that information back, or you can do it with IPv6. This one's relatively new, and I mentioned being the IPv6 person before, so this makes me personally happy. This is specifically for our distributed scan profile type. So a distributed scan is done by your Tanium managed endpoints that are scanning the gaps within their subnet between the managed endpoints. So instead of one endpoint scanning the whole subnet, usually, if you've got an endpoint whose IP address ends in like .5, and then another endpoint whose IP address ends in .15, then that first endpoint is going to scan .6 to 1 to all the way up to 14. Basically, it scans that gap, so these scans can happen really quickly. That's assuming you're using an active discovery method. So for IPv6, we're just looking at something called the NDP cache. This is very similar to your ARP cache in IPv4, where you can look at it and go, okay, this MAC address belongs to this IP address. The IP address is just like a billion characters long. Use DNS, it's your friend. Within IPv4, you get a few more options. You can do a level 1 scan, which again relies on that ARP cache and known and like interface connections. So basically, who is this? What addresses and MAC addresses does the endpoint know about right now because it's directly communicating with those devices on the network? So this one can be absolutely zero network traffic if you don't check to have host names resolved. If you do check host name resolution, you get some NS lookup or dig packets. That's it. It's very lightweight. Next up, and this is the one that you will probably have seen as a default if you look at Discover in your environment after you've first gotten it. This is our level 2 scan, which relies on ping. So if a device responds to ICMP, then it will be found with this ping scan. You can see we've got a handy table that tells you which data points are returned by which level of scan. And we're just using like some basic fingerprinting with the level 2 scan to try and make a guess at OS identification. Our next two
And,
scan, or go ahead.
and Nash, real quick, I see as we're progressing 1 through 4, we're getting more and more check marks. And I think you briefly hit on this, but going up a level takes more and more data, right? More traffic on your net. They're heavier,
A little bit heavier.
a little
It
bit heavier.
is, yeah, it's still pretty lightweight. Um, when we get up to like a level 4 scan where we're starting to do port scans, we're using Nmap, right? And the kind of Nmap scan we're using, it just sends a couple of SYN packets at most to every port that you've specified. And that's it. It's just, it knocks on the door. Is anyone responding? Is anyone there? Okay, no one's there. On the first, if it tries once and no one's there, it'll try again. And then it goes, all right, no one's there. And it moves on to your next one. The level 4, so you got level 3. Level 3 is just an active ARP scan. It doesn't give you, it's not able to guess OSs for you because it doesn't have enough information. Level 4 starts giving you the ability to do OS detection again, as well as port scanning. But because of the way we're using Nmap, Nmap needs to have an open port and a closed port to try and fingerprint that operating system. So if there's no open ports whatsoever, Nmap doesn't have enough data to say this is Windows.
That's so interesting. So putting these pieces together, so the first page you were showing me the interfaces and all of the data like the MAC address, the host name, the manufacturer, et cetera. All of that we get by starting here, by configuring a profile, and how much of that we get depends on the profile level, what level we configure. Am I putting all those pieces together?
That's exactly correct. And I
Perfect.
did want to scroll back up and mention, say you've got a case where you need to discover a subnet, but you don't have any Tanium managed endpoints on it. You can designate a special endpoint as a satellite, and then you start getting some of that cool like port information and host names and IP addresses and oh gosh, so host, OS detection, ports, and IP address from other subnets. Because of networking, when a packet bounces through a router, the MAC address gets changed. I can't control it. Someone decided this before I was born. It was not my decision. You will not get back manufacturer identification if you're scanning a port or a subnet that your satellite isn't on. But still, say you've got a new office and you're like, I know what the subnets are, but I don't know what's on them. You can make a satellite and say, hey, satellite friend, go discover this set of networks. And it'll go cool and it will discover that set of networks for you.
That's
Currently,
awesome. And sorry, I apologize, Josh. So I believe satellites are like a Tanium shared service, right? So you don't configure them within Discover.
no, you would go over to Direct Connect and then you scroll all the way down and you click this create satellite button. It's very simple, but you would configure it here. And then you would go back to Discover or Impact or Provision or Tanium Client Management and do whatever it is that you wanted to do. Previously, historically, satellites have only been able to scan up to 4096 IP addresses per scan profile. You could have multiple profiles per satellite, but still, it maxed out at 4096. We are now going to let you scan up to a whole /16. So instead of having to come down here and, oh, it helps if I set the right kind. Okay, so instead of having to go down here and say, I want this one, and keep going until this adds up to 4096, you can just go to our friend, the shiny new network interface page, create a network, and then say, I want one for all of 192.168. Now, you probably don't because you're going to get a lot of home networks potentially if you scan that range. But still, I think we can all agree that a /16, I'm not going to do the math, is a much bigger number than 4096. And
Exponentially,
this,
one might say.
yeah, I could count and figure it out, but I'm not going to.
Neither am I.
Actually, wait a minute. It's just 65536. What am I on about? Okay. Still, that's a much bigger number. And this is a new thing for us. So previously, you would have to kind of go into a profile and then you could modify your networks there. Now we give you a page for that. And you'll see you get some useful stuff like how many IP addresses does this particular defined network object have? How many profiles is it used to include? So basically say these devices should be scanned or these IP addresses should be scanned. How many is it used to exclude? Basically, don't scan these IP addresses. These endpoints should, like if it's a distributed scan, these endpoints should not scan. You can click the flyout and, oh, let me find one that's a little bit more interesting. Here we go. This one has some exclusions. You can click on the flyout and you can see, you know, here's our here's our name, here's the definition, and then here are the profiles where it's being used, and we've marked that it's being used as a scan exclusion, which means that on these profiles, the endpoints that are targeted by them will not scan if they're in this subnet.
I actually really, really appreciate this. Josh can attest, I'm always harping on this, but I love that when we make changes in Tanium, usually it's to increase efficiency, increase speed, increase ease of use, and optionality is a huge part of that. So being able to see that very quickly to, people will be able to easily adapt that to their workflows.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially if you've got a complex network. You do a lot of mergers and acquisitions, or you're like one of my customers who has 200 sub-customers. They have a lot of network objects to manage. It's very nice going to this one page and managing everything there. It's very simple.
Yeah.
And it's really
Speaking
simple
of,
to, oh, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. So speaking of just simplifying things, just kind of doubling down on this. So the network piece of it, I do want to highlight this for anyone because the network piece of it is newer. And so if you haven't gone in and played with your profiles in the last several months, and you use network definitions, I would highly recommend that you take some time, set up your networks in here because all of those different, like you would have to enter the same networks into 5 different profiles. Now we can just, like you were saying, centralize, consolidate them, get visibility into what they're doing where. It's beautiful. So I love this new feature so, so much.
Yeah, and think about your naming schema. What is this? No one knows what that is. This is nice and clear. We know what that is. Or say this one where it's the corporate network. We know what that is, right? I know this is IT, naming things is hard, but please, I'm begging you, think about how you name things. And so let's see here. I think I really quickly mentioned that you can use those for including and excluding things from scans.
Mhm.
One thing to keep in mind, exclusions take priority. If you say don't scan this, even if it's included up here, we're going to say, all right, you said don't scan it, and then we're not going to scan it. And we do have some kind of obvious, like quickie scan exclusions. You usually don't want isolated endpoints to scan because you don't care that someone's got 37 like IP enabled speakers at home. You don't want to see that. You don't want to scan your VPN network because it's usually just not helpful and people don't get back the kind of information they want to have. Plus, you probably don't want to have your Tanium endpoints peering over your VPN just because you don't want to have the traffic going from like my house up to your VPN concentrator, down to Alex's house, up to the VPN concentrator, down to Josh's house. Talk with and we've got a lot of stuff in our documents that talk about how you can help the linear chain form in a kind of optimal way. An optimal way to do this is to make sure that you isolate those VPN networks at a platform level, but you can also exclude them here. And it's the same kind of thing as excluding a specific network. I think the only other things to mention here is you can target specific computer groups. So say you've got one of those. You're like my one customer who's got 200 different entities and they all need slightly different scans. Well, they all have a computer group. So you can say all of these endpoints will use this profile. You can schedule things. I recommend doing this no less than every about 3 hours for a distributed scan because you want to see stuff. If you're only doing it every 24 hours, okay, so someone brings an unauthorized device on the network at like 3 o'clock and you only scan at 9 a.m. It doesn't exist for you. And do use distribute over time. This just tells endpoints, hey, within this like half an hour period, pick a random kind of start time, just so that not every endpoint is hitting all like the network at the same time. It helps make things a little bit more polite. And if you do really need to, you'll break my heart, but you can choose a scan window and specify specific days that a scan is allowed to execute and choose, does it go by my browser time over here in Central, or does it use the local endpoint time so that the scan is hitting when you want it to for your people in Hawaii? And that's kind of the basics. You set those up, it goes out to the endpoints, they start doing a thing, you get your data in here, then you can start doing stuff with the data, like creating labels. These are basically just tags that can either be applied manually or you can, my preference, do them as automated labels with specific rules so that I know that if an endpoint last told Tanium, hey, I managed 24 hours ago, but it's still being found on the network in the last 4 hours, that endpoint's not talking to Tanium correctly. So I know to go investigate this and find out, like, why aren't we talking to Tanium? And this is applied automatically. There are a lot of different conditions that you can use for labels, and you can get fancy with groups. You just
And Nash,
gotta, yes,
we provide a lot of these out of the box as well, right? So which can be a good learning tool for how to
yes,
build
we
them
do.
correctly.
So you're gonna, if you want to get those, you're gonna want to go to your overview. Let me go back to a sec. So overview, question mark up here in the upper right-hand corner, and then the label gallery. And then the set I recommend everyone downloads is this collection of labels for new deployments. You can see it's just a big JSON file, but it's a big JSON file full of things that you don't have to make yourself, including a label that cleans it up so that you're not going to see a bunch of interfaces that aren't currently in use by your managed endpoints. Like say you've got a wireless card and a wired card. Ideally, you're not using both of those at once. So any given managed endpoint is that's got multiple NICs is going to have some endpoints that don't have an IP address right, or some interfaces don't have an IP address right now. We've got a list of kind of traditionally unmanageable devices that are all of these D99 labels. Things like zebra printers and like scanners. You can't put a client on that. I'm praying we never put clients on printers, but don't tell anyone I said that, y'all. But so you can come in here and it will do some of the work for you so that you don't have to go back and go, I'm seeing all of my Meraki access points. I need it to stop. You can have a label that will automatically mark those as unmanageable so that when you go into interfaces and you look at unmanaged, it's only things that you care about if you're thinking like, what can I bring under Tanium management?
Mm. I like this because it feels like phase one and phase two almost. Phase one is getting the data. So that's our profiles, our networks. And then everything comes in and it's just raw, like that data versus information, right? It's raw data. We're not sure
Yes.
what to do with this. How does this help me? I'm overwhelmed. Labels. That starts to
Yeah.
categorize and bucket things for us.
Yep. It bucketizes, and you can also use the labels to help do things sometimes. So say here with lost interface, if something's no longer reporting to Tanium, wouldn't it be nice if you could have Connect send you a notification that says, hey, this isn't talking to home base anymore? You can configure this lost interface label or any other automatic label that you want to send you that kind of notification. Then you just build it out in Connect, and then you can get a report every day that says, hey, you need to go do something. You can you can mark things as unmanageable automatically. You can ignore things, although you want to be careful with ignoring interfaces because that puts them into this little ignored button or bucket. And unless you go to the ignored bucket to look, you will never know it's there. It does not get included in all. And kind of your three basic states within Discover, by the way, are managed, things that are telling Tanium, hey, I'm managed. Unmanaged, things that are not marked as unmanageable, but Tanium doesn't, there doesn't seem to be a Tanium client on there. And then unmanageable. Unmanageable is a decision that you make using a label. We don't say this thing is unmanageable. We leave that for you to determine because maybe Tanium is only used for Windows in your environment, but there are Linux devices on the same subnets as your Windows devices. You might make a label to mark as unmanageable all of those Linux devices so that it doesn't kind of get in your way when you're trying to see, what could I bring under management? What seems to have 3389 like the RDP port open that shouldn't? It just helps you kind of sort things out. But again, we don't decide that for you unless you count like some of these labels that you can get from the label gallery that mark as unmanageable. And even there, you can delete these, you can change their behavior if you want. That's your business. One thing I do want to point out with labels, you have 15 different units that use Discover. You've divided them up so that, you've got their location permissions set up so that they can only see, say, the Boston subnets when they're the Boston IT department. Those view permissions are just about what can I see in interfaces. Labels are not directly aware of those view permissions. So if you have a label that you want to only apply to a very specific set of interfaces based off of locations, make sure you use this locations condition within Discover to double check your targeting.
This happens to us pretty often, or it happens to me all the time, but I end up, we do these interviews and I see something I've never seen before. This is really cool. I like this.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
very helpful.
Tell us more about those locations. So I love that we can use them as conditions within our labels, but how do we get those set up in the first place?
Okay, so you go to locations, and this is part of our kind of dual factor permission setup in Discover. So with Discover RBAC, you have kind of your standard read write, and then you have visibility based off of locations. This is as simple as a CSV file that you can download from Tanium. And anytime you are going to modify your locations file, I'm begging you, export those locations and store it someplace safe. Because once you import a new file, that's it. Kind of the same thing with labels. If you're modifying a label, export it so that if you mess it up, you can delete the old one and import the new one. This is also a useful workflow within labels if you need to rearrange the order of your labels. But so you've gotten your CSV. If you click on the import button, you can actually download an example CSV. The only columns you have to have are the network, so the subnet the endpoint's on, the NAT IP that Tanium should expect to see associated with that subnet, and then at least one column about the location. This could be as something like region, city, building number. This could be a site code and then the VLAN if you have that information. You have a lot of freedom. You just need to think about this as a tree structure and what is most valuable to you and what makes it easiest for you to categorize things. Like if you're going to use site codes, everyone who's making labels that target those different site codes needs to be able to know what that means.
Got it. I love
But
the
super
flexibility
simple.
of these. Oh, yeah. And the flexibility of that NAT and network assignment, like we need those, but I could name a column Mickey Mouse. I probably shouldn't, but I
Mhm.
theoretically could and put values in there. Like we can do anything that makes sense for the
Yeah,
organization.
absolutely. You can do anything. And you can also, once you've got those put together, you can choose a user group. And then I'm not going to save because I will get in trouble, but you can choose a user group. And then you can say, I only want them to be able to look at building 200 in the data center. This can get very granular. You
Now, does
just
this
want to be,
apply?
or go ahead.
Sorry. Now, does this apply everywhere or just in Discover?
This is only in Discover. So a lot of things in Discover only apply to Discover because we're looking at those interfaces. One place where you do get overlap is, say, Tanium Client Management, where you can use basically, you can see here we've got satellites listed. You can use a satellite and in your targeting, say, use this Discover label, and it will go out and try to install the client onto devices that match that, onto IP addresses that match that label. This gets really helpful with lost interfaces if you want to keep stuff under management. I highly recommend it if you can. I understand that it's always a challenge of how do I get credentials? Even though Tanium stores them securely, if you have 17 different credentials you need to stick in, and not everyone wants to share those with the Tanium admins, I get it. It gets complicated. But where you can, TCM is great. And we have it really well documented in our Tanium Resource Center how you would configure that. Same way we've got it documented how you would configure a job in Connect to send you, say, things that are associated with a given Discover label or a list of interfaces that are currently marked as unmanageable. You can kind of work with Discover data within Discover. You can export it using Connect, and you can leverage it for things like installing the Tanium client elsewhere in your environment, which is super helpful if, say, you've just gotten a new office and you need to onboard all of these endpoints into Tanium. Let's see here. I think I've pretty much touched on just about everything.
And I know we just came from locations, but we did harp on labels. Is now we talked about this a little bit in the very, very beginning of the episode, but like when it came to if it comes to like anomaly finding or locating unauthorized cameras, things like that, is that do labels play a part in that, where we're automatically assigning labels to things that we don't know what they are? Or yeah, if you could please.
Thank you for the leading question. Alex, I think we used to be on the same team,
Mhm.
and I think he was kicking around when we found things like going off of manufacturer. One of our customers found a bunch of web cameras that they later discovered had default credentials that were looking at things that an unsecured webcam absolutely should not have been looking at. My favorite story was a customer who had to do with a lot of agricultural things. Dairy cows are sometimes fitted with collars that have wireless chips in them that happen to be on the same wireless subnet as a couple of people from the home office. So we found cows with Discover. They were like, what is this manufacturer? Well, it turns out that manufacturer makes cow collars for tracking the dairy cows as they move around the barn and get fed and get milked. I've also seen fun things like people discovering rogue access points. Say you've got an unsecured physical like switch port that someone can connect a random wireless router into. Well, now they have Wi-Fi at work that you don't control. None of us like this, right? So if you've got subnets that you know should never have network equipment on them, and you look at what Discover finds on those subnets and it's networking equipment from, say, Netgear, and you are a Cisco shop, you know to go look at that. You can go, well, this is suspicious. Or like I said, switches. Like there are some places have a reason to have things like Rokus and Xboxes and PlayStations or insert leisure electronic thing here on their networks. You probably know if you're one of those. Say you've got a gaming system in a waiting room for someplace where kids are. You hopefully know that that's there. But if it's a data center subnet, I don't think they need that PlayStation. And this might help you identify a set of people who need counseling about appropriate usage of company resources. You can also look for things like, why is port 23 open? I think we all agreed that Telnet it was not a good thing a long time ago. We're not going to tell you for sure that port 23 is Telnet. It might be another, like someone might have mapped it SSH to it because I don't know, people do things. So it might be something that's approved, but you can set up a label and send yourself a report for that label so that you know that like these things have 23 open or these things are printers because they have 9100 open. And why is there a printer there? It shouldn't be there. Once you start kind of looking at what Discover finds, you can start identifying interesting patterns in your environment. that may help you with, cleaning up things operationally. It may help you with, just doing a little bit of improved security doodads. It really depends on who's looking and why.
Mm.
Its security, by the way, is one reason why you might want to have, if you're only using a level 2 scan, you might want to turn on that level 1 ARP scan as well. People who are doing bad things will connect devices to your network and disable ICMP. And you might be able to find something if you've got an ARP scan going that you wouldn't have found if they had disabled ICMP and that was your only scan. I'm just saying.
So much good stuff here. This, like everything within Discover, it's one of those that I always, if I'm not working directly with it, I'm like, oh, it's easy. We find things, done. We found it. But there's so much here. So thinking just as our customers, viewers, as we're watching this, so we want to set up Discover. They want to make sure they've got everything ready to go. Could you walk me through if you were to tell me sequence, when do I configure profiles? When should I figure out my networks? When should I figure out my locations? When do I look at labels? When do I look at interfaces? Can you sequence all that for me and tell me what I should be doing when?
Absolutely. So, when you first roll into your instance, especially if it's a brand new Tanium, you will have a level 2 scan configured. This scan will have all of your managed endpoints. Let me just mock it up here. So this scan will have all of your managed endpoints included, so all networks will be allowed to scan. The only exclusions will be endpoints that don't have any friends, endpoints who are not in a linear chain with other Tanium managed endpoints. It's going to scan relatively frequently, and it will not have a scan window. This will start getting you information within Discover, or at least data within Discover, as you onboard endpoints if you're using the linear chain. So if all of your people are work from home, then you're not really, ideally, you're not getting unmanaged device information because, well, you probably don't have a lot of people who work from home together, although that is a thing, especially with my state and local education customers. People have the same employer. It's amazing. But so you have this level 2 scan. If you want to change your scan type, please come make a new profile with an appropriate name for that scan type. So maybe you want to switch to just doing a passive discovery for a little while. That's okay. Just make one and give it that name, and then you can simply disable or delete the profile that you don't want to use. If you want to make an Nmap scan, it's really simple. You just hit create profile and you boop the button, and there you go. You choose like which ports do I want to scan? Is it just top 1000? Great, then it's super easy. And again, once endpoints get told, hey, you have this profile and they've got the necessary tooling installed, they will begin discovering things for you. If you know out of the gate that you have networks that cannot be discovered due to having sensitive information, like a printer from 1995 that will print any packet you send it, then hopefully you've had this discussion with your networking team already and you know what those subnets are so that you can quickly create a network and then go into your profile and add it to your scan exclusions. Once you've got that going, please go back to that, overview, question mark, the label gallery, and download those POC labels. You'll go into labels, you'll just import them. It's so hard. You just have to click the browse button and then find the correct file or drag and drop. Then you hit import, and then they will appear. And the next time Discover updates its data, so one of these imports, it will apply those labels and take actions that those labels are linked to. You will have to go configure connect jobs for any notification labels that you want to have. But again, we have that documented. You just go to the documents the same way I do, and you start at step 1 and you go all the way to the bottom. It's okay if you don't remember how to do everything in Tanium at all times. I've worked here for over 5 years and I don't know how to do everything in Tanium at all times. I have to go to the documents and go, okay, here's the task. All right, here's my step, and I'm just going to go like this. It's normal. It's fine. You're fine. I promise. So once you have your data coming in, you've imported some basic labels. If you've had a talk about, well, we've got the Boston team and then the Paris team, and you know what the subnets are for Boston and Paris, then you can click import, get that CSV template, start filling it out, upload it when you're done. And then when you've got those user groups configured, you just go back in here, you hit create permission, you pick your user group, and you start assigning things.
So if I have a Boston team and I give them the Boston location, unless I add locations for everyone else is now kind of out of luck. They can't see anything unless I explicitly tell them. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So just make sure that you think through who needs what, and then you give them that. And if the answer is they need to see everything, then they get everything. And we've got
Perfect.
really good docs for all of this. I've worked with our documentation author just because I know networking, and they do so good. It's great. You can go through and it's very granular. And if you just work through the docs and look at some of our recommendations for, we call them like maturity levels, you can really follow that and get yourself into a good position and then make your boss think you're the smartest person in the world because suddenly things are saying under management with Tanium. And oh, by the way, you found that Xbox that someone brought into the data center so that they can get talked to. Just fun, good things like that.
Yeah, I'm a huge advocate of the docs page. I've been using it basically since actually probably before day one, right? So, Nash, thank you so much for the Discover demo today. We desperately needed it. It's been a while since I took a look at this, and it's fun to see how the functionality has matured over the years. And it's always been incredibly powerful, and it looks like you're part of the reason why it's becoming easier and easier.
I'm just lucky that people listen to me when I have ideas. Like that's really it. I rock up and I'm like, hey, what if we do this? Okay, you could put that in as a feature request. And then sometimes it happens, and I'm so intensely grateful. Like I am very fortunate that people listen to my ideas and ask me to talk about things. So thank you for listening to my ideas and letting me talk about things.
Thank you so much, Jesh. Thank you so much, Nash, for joining us today. We learned so much more about Discover and how it's evolved and how it can be utilized for so many different things. And we love that, right? We love hearing the new information and how things iterate and change over time. So thank you so much to the viewers as well for joining us, and hope to see you next time on Tanium Tech Talks.